Ladies and gents, we're back. Week 2 of the revolver course, the first course of the handgun specialist program with SDI. As every gunsmithing or firearm related video should go, safety first, so glasses. For those of you who have followed me throughout the past couple of years, you know I'm an aircraft mechanic as well, so maintenance manuals are key. I got the one right here for our Taurus, and next thing we're gonna do is make sure it's clear, which I'm gonna do with the camera mounted so I can use both hands to do so. First things first is you gotta make sure this firearm is safe or clear. So the revolver is obviously you just open the cylinder up, look down there, make sure there's nothing in there. Other than that, making sure there's nothing in the workspace as far as ammunition goes. First thing I gotta do is take the grip off. That's gonna be this roll pin here. And we're just gonna kind of find a sweet spot for this, this gun block here. Just like that. So over here, you can't see it because the camera is not a wide enough angle, but I have this toolbox, and on top of it's got these little dividers. And that's how I'm going to be keeping track of the parts I take out when I go top to bottom. So now that you got that roll pin out, we can take this off. Next thing we want to do is we're going to take this side plate off. These are going to come out like regular screws. This one has a plunger and a spring under it, so we got to be careful with that one. So you're not going to want to pry under there. You're going to mess up the finish and the bluing and all that on the frame. What we're going to do is you're just going to tap it. Basically, we're going to whack it, and that side plate's going to want to pop off. There it is. We're going to put these back on here. I'm going to set this one upside down so I see the plunger when I go back to reach for this part when I'm putting it back together. So as you can see here, you pretty much see almost everything and how the gun works. So now, in regard with the cycle of operations, we're going to start with cocking just because the hammer is here. Cocking is done with the hammer, and in single action mode, you'd cock the hammer back. In double action mode, it still applies, but you're just doing it with the trigger here. Now, the cycle of operations is kind of blurry for revolvers because a lot of stuff happens at the same time, since it's operated off of the cylinder. But I want to do my best to keep it in order with how the order of operations really is. Because after cocking, you'd be feeding. Technically with revolvers, I would say feeding is when you have the cylinder open and you're actually loading the rounds in. And then normally next would be chambering, but you kind of you could either consider putting the round in chambering, or per our reading materials for this week, chambering could be considered the moment when one of the cylinders aligns with the bore of the gun. So in that instance, that would be the cylinder obviously working, as well as the cylinder stop, which is this piece here. And it's got a notch that goes up and engages with these cylinder notches. And this cylinder stop it has constant spring pressure from a spring inside, a plunger inside the yoke, which is on this side here. It's in there. You'll see when we take the yoke and cylinder out, but it's constantly pushing up. And as you pull that trigger back, or as the trigger is caused to actuate, there's a notch here, and it's going to press down on this part of that cylinder stop and disengage the cylinder. Now I'm starting to get a little ahead of myself because it's revolvers, and I'm starting to get into like the unlocking stage too. So backtrack. Chambering, lining with the bore. Going into locking, it's going to be this locking in, this cylinder stop locking in with the cylinder notch on the cylinder, keeping it in line with the bore. Next, we're going to be doing is firing. We're going to talk about the sear surfaces. So I'm going to start with the double action sear, which is going to be this part right here, because when you pull on that trigger, this is the trigger side of the sear, and then this is your double action sear here, because when you pull on that, it's going to push that sear up, and then eventually it's going to slip, and then the hammer is going to fall, just like so. If the trigger is indeed intentionally pulled back, that transfer bar up here will stay in front of that firing pin, and essentially it'll transfer the energy from the hammer to the firing pin and into the primer of the cartridge. Now for firing in single action mode, obviously you'd have to cock it back first. Now we're sitting on a different sear that you can't really see, it's inside here, but you have a sear on the end of the hammer here, then you have a sear on the top of the trigger here, and then again, once you pull the trigger back, same operation happens again. Next step after firing would be unlocking. You can go two ways with this, or the way I understand it is you could go two ways. As soon as this cylinder stop disengages from a cylinder notch, which is anytime the trigger is actuated and it pulls it down out of the notch, that could be considered unlocking, or you could consider opening the cylinder as unlocking as well, because the next step after unlocking is extraction. Extraction is pretty much, on a revolver, it's extraction and ejection are the same thing. And then that brings us back to caulking, but less talking, more disassembling. First thing I want to take out is the tension spring for the hammer. I'm just going to slip that pin right in there. Now that spring is captured and it comes right out. There's a little hole on the back side of this strut here. And then once it's in there, we can release. Now that spring is captured. You just got to finesse it a little bit. There we go. Just like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the cylinder out because we don't have that retaining screw in there from the side plate anymore. I'm going to be taking the hammer out next. There it is. Next thing that's got to come out is going to be the hand. This is going to be the part that rotates the cylinder. All right, so you got your hand, you got your plunger, and then there's a spring. It got caught in there the first time I did this too. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pin, I'm going to put it in that hole. I'm going to find the spring, and I'm going to compress the spring and let it bounce back, and it should bounce right onto this little pick, just like that. Keep that there. So those small parts I'm going to put in their own bag because they're tiny and they all go together. All right, next up, as you can see, we're going to take the transfer bar and the trigger out. Kind of a straight out ordeal with those. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this cylinder stop out. There it is. To get the firing pin out, you gotta get the retaining pin out first, and then out comes the firing pin with its spring. And last but not least is we got the bolt here. But this is your stripped frame. You could do further disassembly if you want to take the barrel off, but we are not required to do that at this time. And I know barrels from other guns, barrels are usually torqued really tight and they are not easy to get off. So without further ado, we're going to put this bad boy back together. Cool. This thing's ready. Okay, so I don't know if I've mentioned in any of my previous videos. I think I have. Filming something this intricate or something new like this, and I'm like kind of learning as I'm doing it, and filming at the same time is kind of exhausting. And I lose, the ADHD starts to kick in, and I start to lose track of what I'm talking about because I'm focusing on so much. But I do it for you guys. So yeah, just be sure to like and subscribe and just join me on this journey of getting better at making videos, I guess. But without further ado, I'm not going to keep you here any longer. Most of that video was talking and struggling with parts. But you know what I say, stay strapped and stay safe out there. Later. Completely forgot that I had these.